My fiancé, Jeffrey, is a rich young master, but he fell in love with my dad's illegitimate daughter. At a family dinner, the illegitimate daughter came to establish her identity. Jeffrey protected her and kicked me out, leaving me with nothing. Later, I called off the engagement. At a matchmaking dinner with Jeffrey's uncle, a haggard Jeffrey knelt down and begged me, "Wendy, please don't leave me." The mansion's main door swung open. Jeffrey walked in, holding Shirley. One looked handsome, the other beautiful, such a perfect match. "Jeffrey's here, sit next to Wendy." Everyone's eyes fell on the empty seat next to mine. That seat was meant for Jeffrey. As my fiancé, he should naturally sit beside me at my family dinner. But Jeffrey gave the person who spoke a disgruntled glance. "I'm not here as Wendy's fiancé, but as Shirley's boyfriend," Jeffrey stated. I couldn't understand why the man who always looked at me so lovingly had changed, now afraid to be associated with me. After all, he was the one who proposed to me first. Jeffrey and I grew up together. I had a gentle temperament, and he was always cold, showing no warmth to anyone. Except towards me, his eyes were always full of deep affection. Everyone said I was Jeffrey's weak spot. Jeffrey would hold my hand and say, "No, Wendy isn't my weak spot, she's my one true love." Later, Jeffrey proposed to me at my favorite seaside spot, under the starlit sky. Down on one knee, he pulled out a pink diamond ring. "Wendy, will you marry me? Let me stay by your side for the rest of our lives." I cried. But the happy life I had hoped for didn't come. During a business inspection, Jeffrey had a car accident while I was abroad. The airport was closed for a week due to heavy snow. I spent a whole week anxiously waiting at the airport, afraid of missing the first available flight. A week later, I finally returned to the country. But by then, Jeffrey had Shirley by his side. I took a deep breath. "This is a family dinner, we didn't invite Shirley." Shirley hid behind Jeffrey like a frightened rabbit. Jeffrey glared at me coldly and patted Shirley's hand gently. "Don't be scared, I won't let her bully you." I felt disoriented. These words should have been for me. He had said them to me before. But now I was the villain in his eyes. Shirley finally spoke timidly, as if I were some monster. "Wendy, I just want to have dinner with my dad." Today's dinner, though a family gathering, also included some old family friends, a way to maintain relationships. "Leave. I don't consider you my daughter." My dad's tone wavered, not as firm as his words. Shirley's mom was my dad's lover. After Shirley was born, her mom used it to provoke mine. My mom fell seriously ill, and a relapse caused by Shirley's mom's provocation led to her death. I was only 11, crying so much at the funeral that I nearly passed out. Jeffrey comforted me, holding me close. "Wendy, don't cry. You have me. I'll protect you so they can't hurt you anymore." Jeffrey kept his word. He took over his family's business at a young age, becoming a celebrated figure on Wall Street. All his limited tenderness was reserved for me. He protected me in his unique way. Because of Jeffrey, my dad didn't dare contact Shirley's mom again, and he never acknowledged Shirley. "Charlie, if you drive Shirley away today, we'll stop all collaboration," Jeffrey threatened. Jeffrey knew how to manipulate anyone. Predictably, my dad's face darkened. "Jeffrey, you're Wendy's fiancé. How can you be with Shirley?" I looked up at Jeffrey, hoping to find answers. "Yes, why did you stop loving me so suddenly?" "Jeffrey, don't forget you're still my fiancé." Biting my lip, I felt a pang of unwillingness. Jeffrey's eyes flashed with cruelty. "Wendy, wake up. I'm not sick, nor do I have amnesia. I don't love you. I've always loved Shirley. She's the only one I want to marry this lifetime." Shirley timidly lifted her head, trying hard to hide her provoking and proud look, but I caught it. It felt like everything changed when I returned from abroad. Jeffrey wouldn't take my calls, and when I tried again, he had blocked me. I went crazy looking for him, waiting outside his company for days, but he never showed. It poured that day. I stood in the rain, thinking he'd come if he knew I was soaked. Back in school, when Jeffrey and I only had one umbrella, he'd tilt it towards me, not caring if he got wet. Wendy's health is fragile, she can't get wet. Unlike her, I'm fine in the rain, he'd say. The next day, he had a high fever. I visited him, he leaned on my shoulder. As long as Wendy's with me, I'm not afraid of any illness. But this time, Jeffrey didn't appear. A sports car pulled up in front of me, the window rolled down, and it was Stephen, Jeffrey's friend. Jeffrey's family business dwarfed mine. I had met Stephen a few times, and he carried an air of casual arrogance. Wendy, you should go. Jeffrey won't see you. I shook my head. I won't go. Stephen dropped his carefree attitude. Get in the car, I need to talk to you. The cool air in the sports car made me shiver uncontrollably. Wendy, I know what you're suspecting, but let me tell you, Jeffrey hasn't lost his memory. I don't believe it. Then why doesn't he love me anymore? I don't get it. Through the rearview mirror, I could see my pale face, but I stubbornly tried to look less miserable. There's no other reason I can think of. Stephen turned down the AC. Jeffrey remembers everything. It's impossible for him to forget you specifically. It's not scientific. There's only one explanation. My face went even paler. Stop. I don't. Stephen slapped the steering wheel and cut me off harshly. Wendy, how long are you going to keep deceiving yourself? Jeffrey doesn't love you anymore. He doesn't like you. He even dislikes you. In our circle, this is how we treat relationships when things are good. It feels like you're our one and only. When they aren't, we don't even bother with a reason. Wendy, wake up. He finished and pulled out his phone, calling Jeffrey. Jeffrey picked up quickly, his voice lazy on the other end. What are you doing? There was a muffled woman's voice in the background, but I recognized it. It was Shirley's voice. My face turned even whiter, causing Stephen to look at me worriedly, afraid I'd die in his car. I shook my head with a smile, signaling him to pay attention to the call. Jeffrey's low chuckle came through the phone. What else? Working. Drinks after work? Nope, I promised Shirley I'd take her to see the ocean. She loves the sea and the rain. Jeffrey said something to the person beside him, and Shirley's coy giggles echoed over the line. Won't you come see Wendy? She's standing in the rain, soaking wet, looking pitiful. Stephen looked me over. I gave a derisive laugh. So this is how pitiful I seem to them, of course. Making excuses for a man who didn't love me anymore and using self-pity to win back his affection. If I wasn't pitiful, who was? It was all my own doing. And Jeffrey's next words felt like 1,000 sharp knives stabbing into my heart. Her. Just a means to an end. I've seen plenty like her. They think a bit of kindness from me means they can turn their lives around. Wishful thinking. I can't even bear to look at her, let alone like her. She should see a doctor, maybe she's delusional. Women surrounded Jeffrey all the time. He used to talk to me about them, saying their crude and exaggerated tactics disgusted him. I never thought I'd become one of them. Turns out, what I thought was love was just a momentary kindness on his part, not worth remembering or caring about. I burst out laughing uncontrollably. Stephen quickly hung up the phone. Let me take you home. From now on, live well. You're the only heir, take good care of the company, and don't think about useless things. I ignored him, opened the car door, and walked into the rain. Shirley loved the rain. I didn't. At first, it was because Jeffrey got sick from it. Now it was because on this day, the Jeffrey I loved had died. He was dead to me. I snapped out of my thoughts. But when you proposed, you said you'd love me for a lifetime. My confused look made Jeffrey frown. Propose? Did anyone else know? I asked around, and no one knows about it. So, Wendy, when will you stop lying? Indeed, no one knew. That starlit night was just ours, with no one else there. He proposed, and then I flew abroad. After that, I heard he was hospitalized. He never had the chance to tell anyone else. Dad hesitated a bit before speaking to me. Wendy, our family can't fall apart in my hands. Besides, Jeffrey being with Shirley is good for you too. Jeffrey is still my son-in-law. No one would dare mock you. The more Jeffrey loved me once, the more he hated me now. I had become the biggest joke in the capital. Dad was right. If Jeffrey became my brother-in-law, no one would mock me anymore. Dad's intentions were clear. Family ties were worthless against interests. Moreover, he was doubting too. Maybe all the feelings I ever thought existed between Jeffrey and me were just my imagination. I let out a stifled laugh, my eyes tinged red. Jeffrey, let's break off the engagement. Oops, you never proposed, so there's no engagement to break. I swear I'll never show up in front of you again. Let's never see each other again. As you wish. Shirley returned home, now Jeffrey's fiancé. I moved out of the villa and buried myself in work every day. Until today, when I had to attend a party. It was for the heirs of the companies that were on good terms with ours. I never liked these lively parties, but for my dad's business, I had to go. I got dressed and picked a fitted evening gown, then drove to the city's most luxurious 5-star hotel. Heading to the top floor, the waiter led me to a private room, and as soon as I entered, I felt something was off. In the dim light, everyone turned to look at me. Then they started whispering. They were all in casual clothes, venting their emotions to the soft music. Only I was in an evening gown, looking out of place. I smiled self-deprecatingly. I must be in the wrong place. Sorry. Who had informed me about a formal party? I couldn't remember. Lately, I'd been so busy, not sleeping much, that I kept getting headaches. Painkillers had become a necessity. That also affected my memory. Wendy, here for a Cinderella party? Everyone laughed, not just people from my circle, but also those from Jeffrey's. Stephen stood up to mediate. You're here now, so have a drink before you go. No, I've got stuff to do. I turned to leave, but then I heard a crisp voice. Jeffrey, let Wendy stay. It's getting cold outside, and she's not dressed warmly. I forced a bitter smile. I didn't expect Jeffrey to be here. Wendy, didn't you say you'd never show up in front of me again? Couldn't resist breaking your own promise so soon. Jeffrey stood up and walked over to me. The thing I hate most is these playing hard to get tricks. It's disgusting. He smelled of alcohol. I used to hate that smell, so Jeffrey rarely hung out with his friends. I turned around. By the way, I have something to return to you. I took the diamond ring off my finger and handed it to him. This is your engagement ring, and I don't need it anymore. Jeffrey laughed as if he'd heard the funniest joke. Wendy, I have to say I kinda admire you. You're acting so thoroughly, even got a ring prepared? He then took the ring and tossed it into the rooftop pool. I snickered. Jeffrey's face darkened. What are you laughing at? Nothing. That pink diamond was a surprise from Jeffrey. Back then, he tricked me into thinking he had to leave the country for work. A whole month went by with no contact. Just when I was desperate to fly out and find him, he called me to the beach. It was a pristine, undeveloped area. It was as pure as our love used to be. Under the starlit sky, he knelt on one knee and took out a pink diamond ring. Wendy, I found the diamond you love most. Will you marry me? Jeffrey's voice was sincere. Even the cold ocean breeze couldn't hold back the warmth in his eyes. In that cool tone, the pink diamond was the only eternal thing in the world. I covered my eyes so he couldn't see me crying, but my choked voice betrayed my feelings. How did you know I liked pink diamonds? I saw your childhood drawings. That was a painting I did before my mom passed away. Back then, I thought I was the happiest person in the world, with parents who loved me and each other. The drawing showed a little girl's pure and naive dreams of the future. I hoped to find a husband who loved me as much as my dad loved my mom, who would find me a precious pink diamond and propose under a starlit sky by the ocean. That was just a random drawing from childhood. Why did you take it so seriously? I laughed even as I cried. Jeffrey looked at me earnestly. I take everything Wendy says seriously. I'm sorry I couldn't contact you for the last month. There was no signal in the mine. But I wanted to surprise you. I personally dug up and polished this diamond. Every cut and facet is my love for you. Wendy, will you marry me? I will. I don't remember how I got back from the hotel. I just remember the bone-chilling wind. When I got back, I fell into an unconscious sleep, but it wasn't restful. I kept having nightmares. In the dream, it was the scene of Shirley and her mom causing trouble. I kept trying to stop it but couldn't touch anything. Until I saw Jeffrey appear, he walked up to me and pushed me down the stairs. The fall woke me up, and I found myself in tears and burning UPI had a fever. Before I could take any medicine, my company called, saying there was a problem with a contract. I got dressed and stumbled to the office. In the meeting room, our partners were in a heated argument. I had been running the company for years without a hitch, never allowing anyone to act like a shrew and hurl insults. Shut up. The company is letting you go. Wendy, you're firing me? It was Shirley. Even better. Notify security to escort you out. You have no right to boss people around here. Shirley had never done anything but eat, drink, and play. She didn't know how to run a company. Shirley crossed her arms. Wendy, do you think the company is yours? Dad already gave it to me. I'm the manager now. I won't kick you out like you did me, but from now on, you work for me. The fever made my voice hoarse. You have no idea how to manage a company. Shirley chuckled. I don't need to, but I'm now Jeffrey's girlfriend. We're getting engaged only I can keep the company going. The meeting room was empty. Shirley was no longer the little bunny hiding behind Jeffrey. Her face was full of calculation and ambition. I was about to say something when someone kicked the door open. Wendy, you're not allowed to bully Shirley. It was Jeffrey, as if I were a monster who'd devour his precious Shirley. Even when he loved me, he never stood up for me. He'd only quietly stay by my side. I thought it didn't need to be announced to the world. I understood his status didn't allow it. I thought our love was mature and stable. But when you truly love someone, you can't bear to see her bullied. Even someone like Jeffrey will act like an impulsive boy, expressing anger without restraint. Wendy didn't bully me. I shouldn't have taken over the company. Wendy has every right to be angry. Shirley's teary eyes made it look like I hadn't bullied her at all. I let out a cold laugh and collapsed. Jeffrey instinctively caught me. Before I fainted, I saw Shirley's furious face. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Jeffrey walked in. His face looked pale, with a grim aura. Shirley must not have made it easy for him, which somehow made me feel a bit better. Sit anywhere. Jeffrey didn't move, standing 2 meters away from the bed. You did this on purpose, but it's useless. Henry has kicked you out of the company. Do you think a moment's satisfaction is worth losing everything? Jeffrey doesn't need to worry about this. If there's nothing else, can he leave? I closed my eyes. I'd rather have nothing than something fake. Be it career, family, or love. Jeffrey took a step forward. I just found out I stayed in Africa for a month recently. That information was confidential. How did you know? I was stunned. You remembered? Remembered? Don't think you can deceive me just because you got some information. I haven't lost my memory. If something like this happens again, I'll make sure you can't survive in the capital. I couldn't help but laugh. It started low but then became uncontrollable. Jeffrey looked at me warily. What's so funny? Jeffrey, didn't you say you never wanted to see me again? The first meeting was an accident, but why did you come to me this time? Jeffrey seemed panicked. I came to warn you. Don't have any other ideas. I looked out the window silently, and Jeffrey angrily stormed out. Shortly after, the door opened again. You guys really are a pair, both not knocking before entering. It was Shirley. After I fainted, she also stayed in the room next to mine, claiming it was from shock. I couldn't understand why she always had to compete, even when it came to hospitalization. Jeffrey was already hers. But Shirley acted like a victor eager to flaunt her triumph. Wendy, I've always been outdone by you. Do you know how much I hated watching your mom hold you in that fancy garden? That should have been my life, but I was stuck in a tiny apartment with my mom. Why? So, I'm taking back everything that belongs to me. How did you make him forget me? Don't forget, medical technology is advanced. Memory loss can be cured. I looked into it. Jeffrey's amnesia was a result of a car accident where he hit his head. The doctors said it's temporary. And how come you were there to save him? That place is very remote. Did you know he'd have an accident there? I investigated and found it all too convenient, almost as if it was deliberate. It happened on the day I went abroad, and Shirley showed up in perfect timing. Something didn't add up. Shirley didn't seem embarrassed by being exposed. Instead, she bragged. Wendy, you're smart, but you got it wrong. It's not amnesia. I erased his memory of you. He's someone I targeted. If I want him to like me, he will. If I want him to hate you, he will. Wendy, no one can fight against my system. Shirley's words were incomprehensible to me, but I understood everything was her doing. I just intended to frighten her, but she confessed everything. That was an unexpected reward. Wendy, didn't I warn you? Don't have other ideas. Jeffrey looked unhappy, but not because of me. His eyes had dark circles, and his tone wasn't as firm as before. Jeffrey misunderstood. I'm here to discuss business. Business? Don't forget you're no longer with your company. I was kicked out, but I used my connections to start a new company. If it develops, it'll be successful. But since I have leverage, I'll get back what's owed to me. I took out a voice recorder with a recording I made in the hospital. Shirley's boastful voice played, and Jeffrey clenched his fists. This doesn't prove anything. I knew it. I took out my phone and played a video from a travel blogger. The blogger, while filming the starry sky by the sea, accidentally captured a proposal. The main characters were Jeffrey and me. What do you mean? That I was deceived by Shirley and that you and I interrupted, no. From the beginning, I only wanted to do business with your company. I never give anyone a second chance, including myself. When I was a child, my mother softened up and didn't get rid of Shirley and her mom, which led to my mom's death. From then on, I told myself that once you make a mistake, you can't afford to make it again. I told Jeffrey if he didn't cooperate, I'd post everything online, exposing Shirley. This was my bargaining chip for a comeback. Jeffrey's face darkened, but I didn't need to be polite. I'd achieved my goal. Jeffrey, your uncle is here. Well then, I'll wait for the contract and not keep you from your family. I turned to leave just as Jeffrey's uncle, Henry, entered. His uncle was only 3 to 4 years older than Jeffrey but looked much more solid and reliable. If he were interested in the family business, Jeffrey might not be the president. I had met Henry a few times in childhood and didn't have a good impression of him. Unlike his current stability, he used to love fighting. Whenever I saw him, he was in a brawl. So, I was a bit afraid of him. Henry glanced at me, making me nervous, and I dropped what I was holding. I laughed at myself. We've all grown up. Jeffrey, who once promised to protect me forever, loved someone else. How could I expect Henry to still be that impulsive boy? I nodded at him and quickly left. But what I didn't notice was Henry's eyes lingering on me for a while before finally shifting away. With Jeffrey's collaboration, the new company quickly became a rising star. My family's company, though not damaged at its core, lost several big deals due to Shirley's mismanagement. But with Jeffrey's protection, it remained stable. Yet, Shirley lost her cool. After learning about my business dealings with Jeffrey, she confronted me several times. Wendy, do you think Jeffrey will come running back to you, crying, after seeing this? Get real. You lost, and that's that. All messy, yet trying to act superior. I smiled and signed my name on the contract. Don't worry, I won't steal your Jeffrey, but that doesn't mean I wish you happiness. Haven't had a good few days, right? Seeing them miserable puts me at ease. Shirley's mom used to drive my mom crazy. Now, I use my control over the company to drive her mom crazy. I'm all about fairness. Shirley gritted her teeth. Let me tell you, as long as I have the system, I won't lose. Jeffrey loves me. Really? Well, that's great. If Jeffrey doesn't love Shirley, she fails her mission. So, she's reckless with the system's help, but love isn't everything in this world. It seems even a powerful system can't grasp that. Stephen contacted me a few times, saying Jeffrey wanted to see me. I knew what he wanted to say. Except for necessary business interactions, I never have any private contact with Jeffrey. I ignore all personal messages even when we meet, it's only about business. Jeffrey tried to speak several times, but I always found an excuse to avoid him. I knew Jeffrey began to have doubts, started to waver. He was desperately collecting evidence he once dismissed. Even though Shirley's system erased Jeffrey's memories and feelings, some traces of reality can't be erased. That's the effect I wanted. Since Shirley wants to erase it, I'll make sure Jeffrey discovers it. A heavy rainstorm in the evening. I was curled up on the couch, and my phone kept ringing. It was Jeffrey. I answered. Jeffrey, what's up? Wendy, I'm downstairs at your place. No wonder there was an annoying rain sound. But I hung up before he finished speaking. The phone kept ringing for half an hour before it finally stopped. But I knew he hadn't left. So what does that have to do with me? As I was about to sleep, the phone rang again. It was Stephen. Was Stephen planning to sign that contract with me? I always have a good attitude towards business deals. Jeffrey drank, got soaked in the rain. Now he's got gastric bleeding and a high fever. He's in the hospital. Can you come see him? I stared at the phone for a while before replying. You dialed the wrong number. You should tell Shirley. Jeffrey's hospitalized. They say his elders are furious this time. There was a public argument in the hospital, causing the media to catch wind and write about it in the tabloids. Now everyone knows. Of course, the media didn't mention me, only Shirley. Now they vehemently oppose Jeffrey being with Shirley. After all, even wealthy families don't always insist on a perfect match, but they at least want decency. But since Shirley and Jeffrey got together, she hasn't helped him at all. Instead, she's turned Jeffrey and his family into a joke. They all say Jeffrey values feelings. He'd even give up his company for his little girlfriend. What seems like praise is actually mockery. On the hospital bed, Jeffrey looked much thinner. His physical and mental state weren't good. Seeing me, Jeffrey got a bit emotional. Wendy, I knew you would come to see me. I placed the fruit basket from the corner store on the table and signaled my secretary to take out the contract. Jeffrey, the contract we agreed to sign can't be delayed any longer. Jeffrey looked at me, hurt. Wendy, I want to talk to you in private. About the contract. It was just us in the room now. Jeffrey, got any more additions? We hammered out every detail of this contract. Changing it now wouldn't be suitable. Wendy, I remember everything now. I remember. I looked at him calmly, and? Jeffrey, are you going to sign? Jeffrey was stunned. Wendy, you weren't like this before. I was tricked by Shirley. She controlled me. Before he could finish, Shirley barged in. Don't be mad, okay? Without you, I have nothing. I did all this because I love you. I turned and spoke before Jeffrey could, then give me back the company. Jeffrey looked troubled. Shirley doesn't have a home. If she loses this, she has nothing. And I have a home? My mom is gone because of Shirley's mom. My dad isn't even my dad anymore. I lost the company. I'm the one with nothing. Jeffrey couldn't meet my gaze, but I know you have the ability to get everything back. Shirley doesn't. She only knows how to love me. I chuckled softly. So, are we signing or not? He isn't the CEO anymore, so this contract probably can't be signed. Henry showed up out of nowhere. Jeffrey, is this true? I looked at Jeffrey. He avoided my eyes and looked away. Of course, he bartered his marital freedom for it yesterday. In other words, Jeffrey chose Shirley. After a brief moment of surprise, I regained my composure. Mr. Jeffrey, you really are sentimental. Too bad for the contract. I got up to leave, but Henry blocked me. He towered over me, casting a shadow. Wait, I'll sign the contract with you. I am the CEO now. What, don't you want to sign? I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but Henry's lips curled into a smile. No, I'm happy to. As long as there's business, I don't care who it's with. Henry took the contract from me. His long, cool fingers brushed the back of my hand, sending a shiver through my skin. He quickly signed, "Pleasure doing business." I shook his extended hand. "Pleasure doing business. We'll see each other again." I thought Henry's comment was just polite, but I didn't expect to see him again so soon. Although I got kicked out of the house, some senior folks who were once close didn't cut ties. They were upset with my dad but figured it's family stuff and didn't want to intervene. The best they could do was enthusiastically arrange blind dates for me, hoping I could find my own happiness. I didn't really want to go, but I didn't want to hurt their feelings. Might as well meet a new friend. I was stunned to see Henry at the restaurant. What a coincidence. Were you meeting someone too? Yeah. Henry pulled out a chair and sat down. Don't wait any longer, I'm your date today. I stopped looking around. You've got to be kidding me. He wasn't. Henry gazed at me with his deep eyes. I've liked you for a long time, but because of my friendship with you and Shanghai, I couldn't say anything. But now I don't have to care about that anymore. Wendy. A voice interrupted our conversation at the worst possible moment. Henry seemed annoyed, looking at the exhausted Jeffrey. Shouldn't you be prepping for your wedding with Shirley, Jeffrey? What are you doing here? Henry made it a point to emphasize wedding, but it didn't affect me at all. Jeffrey ignored him and kneeled on one knee, pulling out a pink diamond ring. Wendy, I messed up, please don't leave me. I got this ring back from the pool. I realized that I love you. Jeffrey's clothes were still wet, seemed like he had just fished it out. Henry said, Jeffrey, when I left, Shirley seemed to faint at the door. She said she would die if she failed to win you over. Jeffrey froze. No way, she won't die. I can vouch for that. Shirley did say if she failed to win me over, she would die, so she had to get my love. I sipped some red wine, my heart calm as ever. Jeffrey panicked and ran off, leaving the carefully retrieved diamond ring on the floor. Aren't you going to pick it up? Henry looked at me through his wine glass. No, someone will send it to Jeffrey's place. I can't afford such an expensive thing. Such a fine pink diamond is rare, but I remember your drawing had a red one. At the villa, Dad looked at me with a hopeful face. Wendy, the company needs your help. Can you come back? Looking at who should have been my closest family, I felt nothing. Dad, my company is doing well now. And doesn't the company have Shirley? Her husband is Jeffrey, who would dare not to give them face? Dad hesitated. Don't mention it. Jeffrey is a mess now. The company is almost ruined by them. I heard you're seeing Henry with him. We won't have to worry about the company's growth. Jeffrey and Shirley got married. Shirley succeeded in winning him over and stayed. But the system disappeared. Jeffrey chose Shirley under pressure, and they often fought, making it public. They couldn't separate, becoming a pair of miserable lovers. At least they stopped bothering others. Maybe it was the system's influence or the car accident aftermath, but Jeffrey really lost his memory. He couldn't remember anything, even had cognitive issues. His family, ashamed, sent him to a sanatorium. Without Jeffrey, Shirley had to rely on her family, but she wasn't cut out for business. With Jeffrey gone and people working against her in secret, the company became a hot potato. Shirley came to me a few times, frantically accusing me of making her lose everything, but she misjudged me. I hadn't made a move. Shirley considered running away, but debt trapped her without surprises. She and Dad would probably face jail. Luckily, they kicked me out back then, so I wouldn't get involved. Dad, I'm not coming back, and I don't plan to be with Henry either. It'd be too much trouble if you kick me out again, and I'm not interested in the company. You should manage it yourself. Dad got anxious. The company was his life, his decades of hard work. But if he only saw benefits and no family, I'd rather start over. If not for him, Mom wouldn't have died so soon. I planned to sever ties completely and went to pack some old things. The housekeeper, who had been with us for decades, was reluctant to see me go, but she understood. Don't come back once you leave. You've rarely smiled all these years. I remember once, Jeffrey secretly stood up for you when someone bullied you. He scared me to death, covered in blood. Looking back, I could now face it calmly, but I didn't remember Jeffrey getting hurt. It was Henry. The housekeeper didn't notice my shock and kept rambling about Henry when Mom was hospitalized. I zoned out holding that painting. Someone took it, and I went red-eyed to fight them, but they pinned me down. Henry showed up then, driving them away and picking up the painting, though the paper was wet and slightly faded. Henry tried to console me, but Jeffrey showed up. Wendy, I don't remember us having a contract to sign. Henry didn't look up. After that failed date, I told him we'd just remain business partners. Why didn't you tell me back then? Henry finally looked up. What are you talking about, Wendy? If it's about contracts, I made myself clear. Back then. Henry's pupils trembled. Why didn't you tell me? My heart raced, with so much I wanted to say but only managed that. But Henry got it. His low chuckle sent warmth. Back then, though Jeffrey's uncle, my mom was the second wife, and being young, my brothers excluded me. I didn't think I could give you anything, so I just watched over you secretly. Then why now? Because now I have the capability, I can protect you. But I see you don't need it. You can protect yourself well, like with Jeffrey. I calmed down. Thank you. No need. Can we start over? Sure. Everything's back to square one. Feels good.